Welcome to Scary Town. This week we're going to review Monster Blood. And the black. Blood everywhere. Okay, so I've said this before. This was one of my favorite Goosebumps books when I was growing up. It's so much that I tracked down the other sequels and just gobbled them up. And I really like the characters, Evan and Andy, short for Andrea. I just like their relationship. And so this one started it all, and this is the third book in the series. I liked how in Horrorland the third book in the series is also Monster Blood. I like them keeping that as a tradition. This is a nice touch. So our story starts out with Evan being dropped off at his Aunt Kathryn's house while his parents are house hunting in Georgia. And I like it's a pretty sad situation that he's put in because his Aunt Kathryn is deaf and she's a little crazy. She kind of looks like this old witch, and she has this library of books that look like spell books. They probably are spell books. But she's very stubborn. She could have learned sign language, but she refuses to learn sign language. She refuses to learn how to lip read. And so it causes this very awkward situation for Evan. I mean, despite all, she's deaf and stubborn and stuff, she's very odd, and he doesn't like her personality, and then her being deaf and the language barrier, this makes things even worse. He's new here and he doesn't have any friends. There's no TV, there's no Nintendo, and his parents give him this vague, oh, okay, we're going to be house hunting, it might take 2 or 3 weeks, and then they call I think in the second week saying that the house hunting is not going too well, and we're going to have to extend our time over here for another couple of weeks. And it's just it's frustrating. So he's just put in this very difficult position. Right off the bat, you empathize with him. It's pretty messed up. But the deal with his Aunt Kathryn being stubborn about learning sign language and lip reading and all that stuff is a plot point. And once you find out the twist, it makes it even more sense once you realize what the twist is. And so he's not alone in this. He has a dog named Trigger. He's a Cocker Spaniel. At first, he's in the house with Evan, and he's okay, as long as I have the dog with me, maybe this is not so bad. But then Aunt Kathryn, she has this black cat, Sarabeth, who is kind of a creeper a bit. You get this kind of sinister vibe from this cat because I don't know, it's always eyeing Evan, watching him was strange. Sarabeth's not getting along with Trigger, so Kathryn's she just takes Trigger out back by the tree in the backyard and just chains him up to it. And that's where he has to stay, and so he's alone in the house with this seemingly evil cat and this creepy old aunt. She's 80 years old, I believe. And so it's really messed up. But fortunately, he meets this girl who he remarks saying oh, this This girl's kind of cute. Evan's kind of a little bit shy, and then Andy is more aggressive, just kind of takes charge. She says what's on her mind. Their first meeting is pretty funny. I'm gonna read a little bit because it's just her dialogue is well written in the sense that she's like this very strange girl. She just keeps on bombarding him with questions, like finding out what his situation is. He's talking about the dog. He's like, I like your dog. He looks real stupid. I like stupid dogs. And you're gonna start seeing a pattern here with her. And then he says like, oh, his name is Trigger. And it says, yeah, that's pretty stupid, especially for a Cocker Spaniel. And he's like, thanks. He says like, I have a stupid name too. And it's like, what is it? Andrea. And he's like, that's not a stupid name. He's like, I hate it. Andrea. That's what she said. And then he's like, hi Andy, my name is... She puts her hand over his mouth and says, don't tell me. He's like, let me guess, it's a stupid name too. And it says, yeah, it's Evan. Evan's stupid. Stupid is being the last name. Not really his last name. I like their relationship because like they joke around a lot. You know, you can imagine seeing them interact, and it's, I wouldn't say completely realistic, but it's believable, and it really helps carry the story. Because for a long time, first couple of chapters, it takes them a while to actually get into the monster blood. And so they go into town. Andy's looking for a present for a friend, and she says there's 2 toy stores. There's this old one that's really interesting, and there's the new one. Evan's like, yeah, let's go to the old one. And they go to the old one, and it has like this odd man behind the counter who just like doesn't care at all that they're there, you know, just doesn't greet them. And the store is kind of like similar to a very bad thrift store where things are just like thrown together on the shelves with like no organization whatsoever. And so they're just like looking around, and then Evan sneaks into this back room with all these weird toys, and he sees this can, I believe it's a purple can, it says Monster Blood on it, and he grabs it, and then he takes it to the guy at the counter saying like, hey, how much is this? Like, I want it. And then the guy like, it's like, it's not for sale. It kind of, it's going back and forth, like, we're like, I'll give you like $5 for it, you know, it's probably more than, well, what it's worth. And then it's like, no, you don't want it. It's probably old. Like, it probably doesn't even work. It takes a long time, and eventually you're like, okay, you know, you can have it. It kind of sets the tone of like, you know, maybe these kids shouldn't have bought this. And so they take it home, and they start playing around with it, and they like roll it up into a ball and bounce it around. It glows in the dark. It stretches. And it feels really cold. They even take it outside to play with it in the backyard, and the ball that they're playing with rolls out of their hands, and Trigger just swallows it. It's like, oh, I hope he doesn't get sick. And so there's these 2 bullies that basically run the street. They meet up with Evan, and they stop him saying like, you know, you can't cross the street, you know, you have to pay the toll, and there's being jerks. There are Rick and Tony. They're just obnoxious, and they like push him down, and at one point they beat him up, and they even like push down Andy when Andy tries to help him. They steal her bike, but he's like, they do this all the time. They're just gonna leave the bike somewhere once they get bored of it. They're kind of a nuisance, but you need some kind of, until the twist comes in, there's no real villain, I mean the monster blood, is more of a problem because what starts happening with the monster blood, it starts growing and the properties change. It starts getting warm and it just grows out of the can. They put it in this bucket, it grows out of the bucket, and they have to put it in a bathtub, and it just is growing out of control, and it starts sucking things in, and it almost sucks Evan into the bathtub, and it's just like it feels warm, it feels alive, and it just becomes like this big problem. Like they don't have anybody to go with to help them. Things get so bad that Evan even goes to the aunt saying like, I got the monster blood and can you help me with this? And she's kind of like just laughs it off like he's not being serious, and so they have nobody else to turn to. Try to figure things out by themselves, and so they get this idea of putting the monster blood into these large garbage bags, and it sounds terrible what they're doing because you feel sorry for them. They walk all the way down to the toy store with these garbage bags that must weigh a ton. And once they get to the toy store, they find like the toy store is out of business. And they're just really frustrating. It's like a hot day. It's just like, oh, man. Evan has this nightmare where Trigger grows to the size of like a horse, and he chases after the Bamer twins, and then once he corners them, he turns into like this monster, and then he wakes up, and then he realizes he's too big for the bed, like he's growing, and then he wakes up, and the whole thing was just a nightmare, which actually comes true later on, because Trigger does get loose, where Evan goes to the grocery store and brings along Trigger, and he ties him up to a fire hydrant, and he's like going to get some ice cream sandwiches, and he comes back and he finds that the Bimmer twins have stolen him, but then he gets out of their hands and comes after them, chases them down the street, and he's all worried, and then he goes over to Andy, and he gave her some of the monster blood to kind of split up the portions, and it doesn't work because it starts growing out of her end, and she's like, like I can't hold on to this stuff, find some other place to put it. And so they put it all into this large garbage can, like the old ones you see where it's gray and silver looking. And so like the Bimmer twins come back, and this is after some time where Trigger comes back, and he's obviously getting like really big. And so this point where Trigger comes back, and he's the size of a pony, and they're still trying to figure out what they should do, what's their next plan. And that's when the Bimmer twins come up to Evan when he's outside, and they beat the crap out of him because Trigger was chasing them and it scared them, so they wanted some revenge. And that's when the trash can with the monster blood like pops out because it's growing out of control, and then it rolls down, and then all of it like turns into like this, basically like the blob, and it comes after the Bimmer twins, and it sucks them up with this like blop sound. And then it starts coming after them. They're like, we should split up. And then Aunt Kathryn comes out the door like, hey, what's going on? Because she hears all the commotion. Then the monster blood chases her into the house. And then Evans is like, even though the aunt's been like really like a pain in his butt, he's like, well, she doesn't deserve being sucked up by this monster, so he tries to go in to help her, and finds out that she's like cornered by the monster blood, And then she points at Sarabeth the cat, and then he's like, he doesn't understand what's going on. And it turns out like she's actually able to speak, kind of like there's this spell that was put on by the cat, and then the cat transforms into like this young woman, and it turns out like she's a witch, put a spell on Kathryn like 20 years ago. The spell turned her deaf like all this time to make sure, basically some kind of punishment for what she was done, because she was a witch as well. The cat feeds off her, like being her servant, basically saying that Sarabeth put a spell on the monster blood, because the whole time you're thinking like the monster blood is like this crazy substance or something, like it went out of control, like, you know, like maybe that's why nobody knows about it, and it's just in the back of this old toy store, like, but no, there was just a spell put on it, and she was like, I put a spell on the monster blood to kind of get rid of Evan. But it's like, I think she could have come up with a better solution to get rid of Evan than, I mean, the monster blood, all it really does is just, it keeps growing, and it takes like this really long time for it to eventually turn into this blob. And as you'll see, it becomes a problem for Sarabeth as well. She commands the monster blood because she has power over it. So like, you know, I want you to suck up Kathryn. It's Trigger that comes in to the rescue. He comes in because like the monster blood's like over here and it's cornering Aunt Kathryn, and Sarabeth is directly behind the monster blood, and Trigger like just bursts in and does kind of like this drop kick on Sarabeth and knocks her straight into the monster blood. She gets sucked into it, and the spell on Aunt Kathryn wears off, and it dissolves everything, where like the monster blood starts shrinking in size, and the Bammer twins are like okay, and there's like a squirrel got sucked into it. Like at first they're like suspended in animation, and then eventually they come back to life. Sarabeth is like gone, like I guess being sucked into the monster blood just destroyed her. And then it's like a perfect like moment where the mom comes back in saying like, you know, like, hey, we got good news, you know, because earlier in that day she had called Evan saying like, I'm gonna come in and pick you up, and I found a home, and you know, you should be happy. And then it was like an hour before like all the monster blood going crazy, and so she comes in and it's like, hey, what's going on? And then Aunt Kathryn, like, she's kind of surprised that Aunt Kathryn can actually talk now. It's like, I got this long, strange story to tell you. It's like, because they have to catch a plane. It's like, whoa, just kind of make it short because we have to catch a plane. And then once Evan and Andy go back to check on the monster blood, they find that it's gone. It's just, you know, everything's back to normal, like Trigger shrinks down and stuff. And so, yeah, that's the end of Monster Blood. I enjoyed the twist, really kind of rocked me. I had forgotten, it's been like years since I read it, and I just loved it because it makes Kathryn's condition, like, it makes sense why she's stubborn about opening up the communication, not learning sign language and reading lips and whatnot. That's probably why she's very kind of mean, kind of cold. So that it makes more sense now that you know that. And I liked it because it tied everything together, and it made sense why the monster blood doing what it is. You know, like I said, I liked Evan and Andy's friendship. They play well off each other, and it's pretty realistic to how kids would interact. And this is like the first story where there's no like annoying kid, no kid brother or kid sister who's like obnoxious, and, you know, no friend who's like a pain to deal with. The only ones that are really particularly obnoxious are the Bammer twins. They're bullies and they don't really show up too often. And Aunt Kathryn, like, she's she's kind of a pain, but like she really just wants to be left alone. She pushes Evan to go play with Andy and get out of the house and get out of her hair. Because like the whole entire time she's been in pain because she wants to communicate and, you know, be nice, but like Sarabeth kind of puts her in her place. That's why I like it so much, is just everything works and there's no weak spot for me. Nothing that I really had too much of a problem with. And I mean, it's not particularly scary in the sense of like a horror story. It's just a charming tale of Evan just being in this horrible situation. He befriends this girl and together they face this problem and everything works out there. I don't have any problems with Monster Blood, really. It's once it gets into the sequels it starts losing some of its luster, but still I enjoyed the characters and their interaction, and I just wanted to see what other adventures they would get into. And so that's one about Monster Blood. It's a really great story as far as in the Goosebumps area. It still holds up. I was a little bit worried as some things that you remember you liking like from a long time ago and you don't think it holds up. That's all I have for you guys this week. Next week we're going to be going back to Horrorland and more Monster Blood this time, with Monster Blood for breakfast. I'm really looking forward to it. It definitely is a worthy sequel. There's 3 sequels to Monster Blood in the classic series. The 4th one I think is in Goosebumps 2000. I can't remember. But they're all like, they're okay, but they never really live up to the first one. And this one, it kind of does its own thing, but it's really good too. Alright, and so don't forget to like and subscribe if you have been enjoying the show. As you can see, I've been rearranging the room to look a little bit better. I hope you like the new setup. You can find me at Nightmare Nemo, all one word. And you can see me tweet about Goosebumps and my obsession with them. And so that's it. Alright, thanks for watching.